right? What am I missing?
That is one aspect of it. You could make that like part of your pitch. We're becoming a renter's nation, and the renters have the power, so you should rent to a company instead of a regular person, so that way you're more safe as a landlord. I like that. It's a good sale. There's going to be a lot of reasons why we try to pitch somebody into working with us, and diversification against regular residential leases is a great one, right? Are you sick of dealing with really shoddy residents you have to constantly evict, that are late on the rent, that don't repair things, stuff like that? If you're sick and tired of those people, then rent to a business. If you're afraid that the economic downturn is going to cause all of your tenants to lose their jobs, get laid off, and not pay their rent, well, as a diversification, rent to a business. At least we'll pay our rent while all your other tenants run out of money, stuff like that. So those are considerations. So do we have any other Zoom questions? And watch your left foot. Yeah, I just don't want you to kick it.
No, that was the other question.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is going to be something that I want you guys to practice in a mirror, not with yourself. I'm not going to make you memorize a really long script and do a breakout session on all of that. The second part is written, right? You can just write that email all day. The key thing is to not oversell in the email, right? What I told you is literally what I would write. Thank you so much for this lease. I just want to touch base, make sure we're on the same page. The longer that email, the more like people are like, what is going on here? So try to keep it casual, but you're casually asking for a yes. The script, when you're talking to the leasing agent, you can be a little bit more flavorful in the way that you talk about your business, because the angle that you're trying to like talk about here in your story script is we're a corporate housing company, but we're better. We're way better. Right? We do things slightly differently. We're cooler than the other corporate housing companies. We sign year-long leases. Way cool, right? 2-year-long leases. Can I get an amen? Like you're like talking, like you're talking to the leasing staff like we're like the coolest company ever. Let me tell you about how we're so cool. Because you have pride in your company, and like you kind of want to be a little bit pitchy, like yeah, our company's like the future, man. And so you can be flavorful and like express yourself when you're doing like the lease walkthrough. And then when like Sarah takes you to Greg, right? Like, hey, I showed them the billing, they want 10 units. Then you talk to Greg a little bit, like, yeah, we're a really cool company. We've got this really good progressive model. We're signing multi-year leases, which is way cooler than normal corporate housing. Wouldn't you agree, Greg? Good, let's do business. It's important that you kind of embody this, like, we get to choose which buildings we want to work with, because we're a cool corporate housing company that does cool things, right? You want to keep that dynamic there. And so they're going to be like, yeah, apply. Cool, sounds great. Apply. And then they want to win the 10 doors. And then somebody might need clarification and say, so wait, how do you get your tenants? Or are you doing Airbnb? Or what about screening, minimum length of stay? Most everything that they say, you want to try to act like it's not a big deal. Yeah, we can do that. We can work with that. We can find a way. Don't worry. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's work it into the lease, you know? Just that back and forth that like, yeah, we work with all sorts of different landlords, and they have different preferences about screening or length of stay or stuff like that. The only thing you want to avoid is them saying, well, you can sign leases here, but you can't Airbnb, right? They say that like, hey, this is going really, really well. We can try our best to get multi-month stays with businesses and, you know, and insurance companies as our only method of acquiring tenants and guests. But as a means of strategy and as a means to protect our profitability, we cannot promise that we won't use specific third-party websites. If push came to shove and we needed to stay full, we'd want to have creative control to use different third-party websites at our discretion, right? So you say, I can commit to you that we'll try our best to stay full with regular business clients to really keep the load of Airbnb down at this property, but we cannot promise that we won't use any specific third-party website, just as a means of strategy to protect our profitability just in case. So I could try to meet you in the middle on this and say that we're really going to like push for like multi-week stays, business-to-business stays, maybe even monthly stays as a primary, right? And then get them to be like, okay, we're going to trust you. You sound like you know what you're doing. You sound like you're responsible. We're going to trust you. Because even if they say no Airbnb, I flip that and it's like, okay, let's give this a shot. So you just have to be like executive about it. No, you just said like you can email like, hey, we can try our best to utilize business to business and insurance placements as much as possible, and to try to have as many monthly stays as possible, you know, to keep the churn down or to keep, you know, Airbnb type traffic out of your property as much as possible. But we cannot promise not to use any platform. We need creative control permission to use any third-party platform as we see fit to stay full and to stay profitable. So you just said, hey, we're going to try our best, but we are going to use Airbnb. We're reserving the right. Yeah. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make you're going to have a really juicy monthly discount and start to look for some monthly stays. I mean, even if you get a full-hearted, yes, this sounds great, your very first tenant should be multi-month. You should try to get a 6-week stay right out the gate because first impressions matter. And if you have a very sleepy first impression where there's like very little churn, almost like no new guests and people are kind of settled in and everything's going well the first couple of months, then after the first couple of months, like that's the honeymoon phase for an apartment complex. It's about a couple months. That after that first couple months, if you've had no complaints, they're like, okay, this is good. But let's say you sign 10 leases with an apartment complex, and then day 4, there's a party. Up in arms, right? Oops. Yeah, so you want to be careful. So you want the first couple of months to kind of go off without a hitch, so I do try to incentivize longer stays right out the gate for a property. There's one property actually that we did in Fort Worth where we got leases, and about 5 weeks in was when they were like trying to like kick everybody out because somebody had something bad happen with one of their properties. I went to them with our calendar and said, hey, look at this. We're 95% multi-month. We're booked out for the next 4 months on multi-month stays. I can promise you it's not us. We got like 2 days here or there that are empty, but everything else is multi-month. I can promise you we're completely different than the companies that you tend to work with, and they let us stay and they kicked everybody else out because we prioritize multi-month.
But you talked about before the first 30 days, like the algorithm of Airbnb is super important. So with that,
if you get 100% occupied on a multi-month stay, Airbnb is like, yes, because Airbnb loves multi-month stays, right? They love that. It's low risk for them. There's less churn, which means that they still get their 11%. Like 11% for like on one big reservation that's long, they're like, yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, what they want is they want your percentage of occupancy. So yeah, if you're 100% full because of a multi-month stay, to the moon. Yeah.
Maybe this is like for sublease.
So it's not technically subleasing if you don't have an occupant on the lease because you're now declaring new occupants for that one lease. There's not a second lease under your lease.
Yeah.
So this does depend on interpretation.
Yeah.
If there's a city regulation about subleasing or length of stay, then the city might have something else to say about it. But if it's a civil thing between you and a landlord, you guys can collectively agree that it's not subleasing because there's no other lease under it. If there's a minimum length of stay requirement, like a 30-day minimum, those can happen city to city. And like I was talking about, somebody in LA was asking like how we handle 30-day minimums. And in a place like LA, we would gladly do 30-day minimums in like exposed brick studio apartments with big windows, like well-lit little studio apartments. And then we put it on PEERSPACE and do like by the hour like photo shoot bookings in between our monthly stays. So in bigger cities like this or Los Angeles, the Northeast, even like Brooklyn, like areas like Brooklyn, they have a 30-day minimum. I'll do 30-day minimum and then PEERSPACE the listing in between. I'm totally cool with stuff like that. So it really depends on what the intention of the no subleasing thing is. If it's a no subleasing because there's a minimum length of stay requirement, that's different. If there's no subleasing just because there's no subleasing, you can defend it as a company. You're not subleasing. You're just declaring an occupant.